What if the safest town in America was only safe because it paid for that safety with the lives of its own children? What if every full moon, a mother had to choose between her baby and the survival of everyone she knew? And what if the man protecting the town was the one feeding the monster? Tonight, we're going deep into the remote hills of Shadow Hollow, West Virginia, a place where the night feels heavier, where children don't play after dark, and where an ancient evil called Moloch still demands its price in innocent blood. This is a story you won't forget, because it might be happening closer to your home than you think. It was midnight, the kind of midnight that swallows every sound and makes the trees themselves seem to hold their breath. Deep in the overgrown ruins of an old abandoned Baptist church, hidden among the West Virginia hills, a fire pit burned with unnatural intensity. The flames were not orange. They flickered between deep red and black, casting long, twisted shadows on the crumbling stone walls. Seated before the fire was Harlan Crow, the most feared and revered faith healer in Shadow Hollow. His face was carved with deep lines of age and dark knowledge. His eyes, usually cold and calculating, now burned with fanatical intensity. In front of him stood the idol, a grotesque statue with the muscular body of a man, the furious head of a bull, and a gaping furnace burning fiercely in its belly. Harlan's voice rolled out low and rhythmic, echoing through the ruins like an ancient curse. Moloch, devourer of the pure, rise and feed. Moloch, accept what is rightfully yours. He reached down and lifted a small, unconscious boy no older than 8. The child's head lolled limply. Without hesitation, Harlan hurled the boy straight into the blazing furnace inside the idol's stomach. The moment the child disappeared into the flames, the fire erupted violently upward in a roaring column that lit up the entire forest. The statue's stone eyes suddenly flared with a sickening blood-red glow. Harlan threw his head back and laughed. A deep, guttural, demonic laugh that seemed to shake the very ground. You awaken, Moloch. You awaken at last. Now Shadow Hollow will be blessed again. The crops will grow heavy. The sickness will stay away. The roads will be safe, as long as you are fed. The fire from the idol's belly illuminated the black woods like a gateway to hell itself. By morning, the whisper had spread through every hollow, every dirt road, and every porch in Shadow Hollow. Harlan Crow woke Moloch last night. The offering was accepted. The long drought is finally broken. Our fields will be green again. No more fever taking our families. Only Harlan could do it. He's the true servant. No one else has the power. Of course, we all know what it costs. But it's a small price to keep the town alive. But not everyone agreed it was a small price. Laura Bennett was a 34-year-old widow living on the edge of town. Her husband had died 2 years earlier in a mysterious single-car accident on the winding mountain road. Since then, her entire world had narrowed down to her only child, 8-year-old Jacob. When Harlan Crow and Mayor Whitaker's men arrived at her small wooden house that morning, Laura already knew why they had come. She barricaded the door and screamed through the window, "You are not taking my son. I don't care what your demon wants. Take me instead. Burn the crops. Let the fever come. But you will not touch Jacob." Harlan stood outside, calm and cold as winter stone. His voice carried clearly, "Laura, this is not your decision anymore. Moloch has chosen Jacob. Your boy will become the blessing that saves every family in Shadow Hollow. He will be remembered forever. At every supper, the first plate will be set aside in his name. The whole town will honor him." Laura fought like a wild animal when they broke down the door. She clawed, bit, and screamed, but there were too many of them. They tore Jacob from her arms while the boy cried out for his mother. They dragged Laura kicking and sobbing down to the old root cellar beneath the ruined church and locked her inside the pitch-black darkness. Alone in that damp, freezing cellar, Laura collapsed against the stone wall, sobbing uncontrollably. "How did it come to this?" she whispered to herself. "We used to be a normal town." Flashback, Laura's memories asterisk. 5 years ago, Shadow Hollow was different. Children played baseball in the evenings. The little schoolhouse rang with laughter. Families went to church on Sundays. Then the great drought came. Crops withered and burned in the fields. Strange fevers swept through the hollows. Livestock died. People whispered that the land itself had been cursed. That was when Harlan Crow stepped forward and offered a solution. He claimed an ancient power, Moloch the Devourer, could restore the town if given what it demanded. One pure, innocent soul every new moon. A child. At first, the townspeople were horrified. But when the first child was offered and the rains returned the very next week, bringing lush green fields and healing the sick, fear slowly turned into desperate acceptance. Laura had watched it happen. She had stayed silent then. Now it was her turn to pay the price. 1 week earlier, a Greyhound bus hissed to a stop at the dusty crossroads just outside Shadow Hollow. A tall, sharp-featured man in his mid-30s stepped down. Marcus Kane, field investigator for the West Virginia State Department of Education. He wore sunglasses, a crisp button-down shirt, and carried an official ID clipped to his belt. His mission was clear: figure out why Shadow Hollow Elementary had gone from 72 enrolled students 3 years ago to complete zero attendance now. The state had been forced to shut the school down. Marcus was sent to write the final report. The few locals at the crossroads stared at him with open suspicion. "City man," one muttered. "What's he doing here?" Marcus asked for directions to the mayor's house. A nervous young man named Billy gave him a ride on his old pickup truck. "You sure you want to go poking around here, mister?" Billy asked, his hands tight on the steering wheel. "Some things in Shadow Hollow, they're better left alone." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I'm just here about the missing students. That's all." Billy didn't answer. He simply dropped Marcus off and drove away quickly, glancing back in the rearview mirror. Mayor Whitaker greeted Marcus with a wide, artificial smile and a handshake that lingered a second too long. "Mr. Kane, you drove all the way up these dangerous mountain roads for nothing," the mayor said smoothly. "Folks around here have simply lost interest in formal schooling. It happens in small towns." But Marcus had done his homework. He opened his folder right there in the mayor's living room. 72 children 3 years ago, 19 the year after, 0 now. No transfer records. No explanations from parents. "That doesn't just happen, Mayor." Whitaker's smile faltered for a split second. "People make their own choices." That evening, Marcus decided to walk through the town. The streets were eerily quiet. No children playing. No bikes on the roads. Every porch light seemed dimmer than normal. Near the old ruined church on the edge of the woods, he heard soft voices. A group of 7 or 8 children, none older than 10, were gathered in the dirt. They had drawn a crude but unmistakable figure, a bull-headed man with fire in its belly. One boy sat cross-legged in front of it, eyes closed, rocking gently as he whispered words that sounded like a chant. Marcus stepped closer. "What game are you kids playing?" The boy opened his eyes slowly. "It's not a game, mister. It's the sacrifice game. On the new moon, Moloch gets hungry. We have to give him something pure, or the fever comes back and takes everyone. Little Tommy is next this time. Would you let us offer him?" Marcus felt his stomach drop. Before he could ask more, one of the mayor's men appeared suddenly. "Mr. Kane? It's getting dark. Nobody stays out here after sunset. Not safe with the wild animals and all." The warning felt less like concern and more like a threat. That night, Marcus lay awake in the small room the mayor had arranged for him. The words "sacrifice game" kept echoing in his head. Around 2 a.m., he noticed an orange-red glow coming from the direction of the church ruins. Unable to resist, he slipped out quietly and made his way through the dark woods. There, in the center of the ruins, was Harlan Crow performing the ritual. The idol stood tall and terrifying. The fire in its belly roared. Marcus hid behind a collapsed stone wall, heart pounding. Without opening his eyes, Harlan spoke in a calm, mocking tone. "Come out, government man. You've come all this way. No need to hide now." Marcus stepped into the firelight, trying to keep his voice steady. "What the hell is going on in this town? Children are disappearing. Schools are empty. Are you really burning kids alive for some twisted cult?" Harlan let out a low, terrible laugh that seemed to vibrate through the stones. You outsiders always call what you don't understand crazy or superstition. This isn't madness. This is survival. Moloch keeps Shadow Hollow alive. The crops grow twice as rich. Diseases stay away. Even the mountain roads become safer. All it asks in return is one pure soul every new moon. A child with no sin. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. You're a murderer. You've been sacrificing innocent children for your own power and control. Harlan's eyes began to glow with a faint red light. I serve something far older than your laws and your government. In 7 more years, I will become immortal. The entire town will worship me as the true protector. At that moment, an elderly man named Mr. Caldwell stepped out from the shadows, followed by a small group of townspeople. Mr. Caldwell's hands were shaking, but his voice was filled with decades of buried pain. 20 years ago, this man took my only grandson, told us it was Moloch's will. I believed him then. Tonight, we end this nightmare. The crowd surged forward. Harlan tried to chant protective words, but they overwhelmed him. They dragged the screaming healer to the idol's blazing furnace and threw him inside. Harlan's agonized screams tore through the night, echoing off the hills. Then everything fell into a heavy, unnatural silence. The next morning, Shadow Hollow felt different. For the first time in years, children played openly in the streets. Women hung laundry and laughed together. The air itself seemed lighter. Marcus boarded the Greyhound bus back to the city, exhausted but convinced the horror was finally over. He was wrong. Months later, another new moon night, footsteps crunched softly through the overgrown ruins. A man in his mid-20s, carrying a shovel over his shoulder, approached the spot where the idol had been buried after Harlan's death. He dug methodically. Dirt flew. Stones were moved aside. Finally, his shovel struck something hard. He dropped to his knees and brushed the soil away with his bare hands until the bull-headed idol emerged. A slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. Father, it's time to come home. Your work was never meant to end. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating his features for one frozen second. The same sharp jawline, the same cold, dangerous eyes as Harlan Crow. His name was Caleb Crow, Harlan's son. Caleb carefully placed the idol back on its ancient stone pedestal. He whispered the forbidden chants his father had secretly taught him since childhood. Then he pressed his palm firmly against the cold stone chest. A spark of deep red light flared inside the furnace belly. The same demonic, guttural laughter that once belonged to Harlan now rolled out of Caleb's own throat. Low, hungry, patient, and eternal. Moloch had not been destroyed. He had simply found a new vessel. And somewhere in the hills of Shadow Hollow, the cycle was ready to begin again. If the story from Eerie Narratives sent chills down your spine and kept you listening till the end, hit that like button right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new tale of true American terror. Tell me in the comments, if you lived in a town like Shadow Hollow, would you become the next Marcus Kane and try to stop it? Or would you stay silent to protect your own family? Drop your answer below. The scariest stories are the ones that feel like they could happen tomorrow. New Eerie story drops every week. Stay haunted, America. Eerie Narratives, where the darkness has a name. In the flickering shadows of an old silver screen, a story written in blood waited to be told. Behind every empty seat hid a silent mark from the past. The truth had been buried for years inside that forgotten New Orleans theater. A restless spirit wandered its own endless path. The man who had committed the cruelty now shrank in terror. His own punishment became the darkness that swallowed him whole. Aisha sat at her desk in her cramped downtown office, scrolling through her phone with a sigh. The city lights of New Orleans hummed outside the window. Her best friend Nia burst in, newspaper clutched in her hand like a weapon. Aisha looked up and flashed a small smile. "Hey you, what's up?" Nia dropped into the chair across from her. "Girl, I'm good. How you holding up? Still grinding with that PI work?" Aisha leaned back. "Barely. No cases in weeks. If it stays like this another month, I might have to dust off my old software engineering gig. I don't want to, but bills don't pay themselves. Nia slid the newspaper across the desk. I got something solid for you. Aisha's eyes locked onto the headline. Another mysterious death at the Real Cut Theater. You heard about this? Nia asked. For days old, right? Sixth death in 3 months at that old place on the edge of the French Quarter. My cousin works maintenance there. He spilled everything off the record. The owners have been paying off families to keep it quiet. No real investigation ever happened. But here's the wild part, he swears Screen 3 is cursed. Something evil. They told the staff never to speak about it. Aisha raised an eyebrow. Cursed? In a city full of ghost tours? That's a bold claim to bury. You know who owns it? Nia leaned in. Councilman Kwame Mensah, ex-gangster from the old wards, cleaned up his image, now sits on the city council. My cousin thinks the deaths tie back to him somehow. Aisha stared at the headline, jaw tightening. She gave a slow nod. Interesting. Real interesting. 3 days later, Aisha stepped off the Amtrak at New Orleans Union Passenger Terminal, duffel bags slung over her shoulder. That same evening, she climbed out of a cab in front of the Real Cut Theater. The neon sign flickered weakly above the faded marquee. $28, the driver muttered. Aisha dug for cash. Why'd you get so quiet when I said where I was going? The driver glanced at the theater, eyes uneasy. Folks say there's something in there, something that don't stay dead. Some things you're better off never poking. He took the money and sped off without another word. Aisha stood alone for a moment, then squared her shoulders and walked inside. In the theater office, Councilman Kwame Mensah sat behind a heavy oak desk, gold watch glinting under the lamp. Aisha laid out her pitch. Let her investigate one night, kill the ghost rumors, and give the place a clean bill. I don't need publicity, Mensah growled. Especially not the kind that drags my name through the mud. Fair, Aisha said. Here's my offer. I investigate tonight. If I find nothing, I walk away silent. If I find something, I keep it to myself unless it's criminal. One night, that's it. Mensah studied her for a long beat, then nodded once. One night, then you're gone. Later that evening, Aisha met the old caretaker, a wiry man named Musa. His left leg dragged slightly, and his eyes never quite settled on one spot. A heavy ring of keys jingled at his hip like warning bells. He looked at her with a mix of pity and fear. Councilman says Screen 3 is open to you, Musa rasped. But if you listen to an old man, turn around now. These walls have ears. These curtains have eyes. Thank you, Musa, but I didn't come here to be scared. I came to work. Can you show me Screen 3? The hallway was dim, lined with faded posters of old horror films that seemed to watch them pass. Musa stopped at a heavy door marked with gold lettering and unlocked it. He handed Aisha a flashlight, then stepped back fast, as if the room itself might bite. Inside, the air was freezing, colder than the lobby by far. Aisha's breath fogged. Rows of seats stretched upward into darkness. She walked down the center aisle, footsteps swallowed by worn carpet, until her light landed on seat D-23. It looked ordinary. Too ordinary. She opened her duffel, pulled out a thermal camera and laptop, and set up sensors around the row. Data doesn't lie, she whispered. Ghost or hoax? Something's leaving a signature. She typed. The laptop keys clicked steadily. Then the temperature on her screen plunged from 68 degrees Fahrenheit to 39 degrees Fahrenheit in seconds. A low rumble vibrated through the floor. The giant screen at the front, blank a moment earlier, began to shimmer with a sickly green glow. Aisha looked up. Through the thermal camera, she saw a massive shape standing in front of the screen, humanoid, tall, but invisible to the naked eye. She swung her flashlight. The glow vanished. Instead, the soft crunch of popcorn echoed from the exact direction of seat D-23. Aisha turned the beam slowly. The seat was empty, but the cushion was pressed down, as if someone heavy was sitting there. Who's there? Show yourself. The crunching stopped. A cold draft swept the hall, though every door was sealed. The digital recorder on the next seat clicked on by itself. Not her recording something new. A scream, raw and desperate, but the words were garbled. In the distance, the faint mechanical whir of a projector started up. Aisha sprinted for the projection booth. The booth was small, stinking of burnt oil. An ancient 35mm projector sat in the center, reels spinning on their own. No one at the controls. Aisha crept closer and peered through the tiny window overlooking the hall. There, sitting in seat D-23, was a man in a torn projector operator uniform, staring straight up at her. "Who are you?" she breathed. "What do you want?" No answer. The projector lens flared with blinding white light. Aisha threw her hands over her eyes. Hours later she woke on the booth floor, head pounding. She staggered up and looked down again. The seat was empty. She hurried back to her equipment, packing fast. As she stood to leave, the giant screen flickered to life on its own. Grainy CCTV-style footage rolled. Timestamp: March 21, 2015. The projection booth appeared. A younger, leaner Councilman Kwame Mensah argued with a young man in the same uniform, Jabari, the projector operator. "You ignored every warning I gave you about my daughter Amina," Mensah snarled. "Now you pay." "Councilman, I love her. I'll take care of her, I swear." "Love." Mensah grabbed Jabari by the throat and switched on the projector. The giant reel began to spin. "What are you doing?" Mensah shoved Jabari's head toward the spinning pulley. "This is what happens when you forget who runs this city." Jabari screamed. His head slammed into the whirling mechanism. Blood sprayed across the walls and Mensah's face. Later in the footage, Mensah sat in seat D-23 while Musa arrived. They stuffed the body into a sack and dragged it out. The screen went black. Aisha dropped to the floor, stunned. It wasn't a ghost story. It was a covered-up murder. Jabari's spirit had only wanted the truth to surface. The theater doors burst open behind her.
Aisha Spoon.
Councilman Kwame Mensah stood there, silenced pistol aimed at her chest. "I told you not to use this for your little detective fame," he said coldly. "You saw what you weren't supposed to see. Now you become part of the show. You killed Jabari in cold blood. And now it's your turn. Walk upstairs. Nice and slow." Aisha backed up. "If I die, every bit of this data uploads straight to the cloud. Your whole empire goes live." Mensah smirked. "No signal in here, sweetheart. I had jammers installed the day you arrived." He raised the gun. The entire theater plunged into darkness. Every light died at once. The speakers exploded with a deafening, unearthly screech. Mensah fired 3 wild shots into the black. He fumbled for his phone flashlight. Nothing moved. Then he felt hot breath on the back of his neck. He whipped around and fired again. A low chuckle echoed. Mensah stepped forward confidently. "Told you not to play with me." His flashlight beam swept the floor, empty. He raised it higher. Jabari's spirit stood inches away, eyes burning with 8 years of rage. Mensah screamed, stumbled backward. He spun toward the projection booth. A shadow flickered inside. "You're not real," he roared, sprinting up the stairs. "I ended you once. I'll end you again. Just like I ended that worthless boy." He slammed into the booth and flipped on the lights. "Come out. Face me like a man." The door slammed shut behind him and locked with a heavy click. Mensah pounded on it. "Open up. Open the damn door." The lights began to strobe. The projector reel suddenly burst into flames. Film strips on the floor slithered like snakes, wrapping around Mensah's ankles, then his legs, his chest. He thrashed, screaming. Jabari's spirit appeared behind him, calm and merciless. The end of the film strip fed into the spinning pulley. It yanked Mensah forward. His head slammed into the mechanism exactly as Jabari's had 8 years earlier. A sickening crunch echoed through the theater. Blood painted the walls again. Jabari stood watching until the last twitch stopped. Down in the hall, Aisha stirred. The scream had knocked her out cold, but she'd fallen behind a row of seats, out of Mensah's line of fire. She sat up, dazed, and looked toward the booth. Jabari stood in the window, face peaceful now, eyes no longer angry. He gave the faintest nod, then faded away. Aisha knew justice had finally been served. The spirit was free. Hours later, she stepped out of the theater into the humid New Orleans night. Nia's car screeched to a stop. Nia jumped out and pulled her into a fierce hug. "Are you okay? Your emergency ping came through last night. I caught the first train I could." Aisha looked back at the dark theater. "I'm good, and I think the real cut is finally clean. No more deaths. No more ghosts. What the hell happened in there?" "Long story," Aisha said with a tired smile. "I'll tell you on the way home." They climbed into the car. The engine roared to life, and they drove off into the city lights, leaving the silent theater behind. If this tale of buried secrets and long overdue justice sent chills down your spine, hit that subscribe button right now and join the Eerie Narratives family. Turn on notifications. You never know when the next restless spirit will knock on your screen. Drop a like if you believe the dead always get their revenge. Comment your favorite haunted theater story below, and share this with someone who loves a good twist in the dark. More terrifying true crime-style nightmares are coming your way, only on Eerie Narratives. Stay eerie, stay safe.